So, with the news for Torontonians for Wednesday, February the 6th, this is your host, Dorian Sky. So the police officer who's been getting in trouble for sort of like dropping the ball on the this guy who murdered a whole bunch of men in Toronto, Bruce McArthur. This cop, he's been getting in trouble for not following correct procedure when he had McArthur, and McArthur was lying to him about choking somebody. It kind of looks bad because it's like, okay, yeah, the cops are believing this white guy who came to them to get ahead of some, allegations that he knew were going to come at them as well from this brown guy. Cops interviewed the white guy, and they're like, oh, it seems like he's probably telling the truth. The guy's full of shit. The guy wasn't full of shit. The guy was Bruce McArthur. The cop in trouble claims that he is being scapegoated. So I guess he's kind of saying like the guy fooled me, but I'm not responsible for this guy getting away with all these extra murders. This janitor at Western General here in Toronto has gotten in a ton of trouble for sex assault on children. And apparently he already had some kind of history of like sexual crime or something when he was hired. So somebody might be negligent on stuff, but one story came in from one person, and then investigation revealed there's actually more victims. So this just blew up on us. The Ford government is taking aim at childhood autism. Will their new plan succeed in clearing the wait list for autism treatment for kids in Ontario, or will it make the treatment inaccessible and or terrible? For a while, Canadians have been receiving copyright infringement notices if like through their ISPs, through their service providers. So if you have an internet account, somebody in your house downloads something that is copyrighted, off pirate something, then you get an email about it. And now there's a new push to go after the people who are uploading a bunch of stuff using kind of the same sniffing techniques to like go out and just find anyone who's uploading stuff. But of course, the government already decided companies can't threaten consumers of pirated material. So people go and view something online, they can't be threatened with damages, but they can totally go after uploaders. So there's this new push to go after people who are like publishing pirated content, pirated movies and stuff to the web. But when Global reported on this, they said viewer beware. They really should have said uploader beware, because it's the uploaders who are getting targeted. It really seems like the roads have kind of been designed to like collect water in terrible puddles. And I mean, when designing a road system, you got to think about, flooding. And also when designing streets and stuff, you got to think about noise. Still haven't had a chance to go to the apparent screaming condo building up on Eglinton. I think it's Eglinton and Yonge, where the company claims that when the balconies are finished, when all the components are finished being installed, they will stop making a terrible sound that people have described as sounding like a building screaming. So the wind and the water seems to just simply slip past the people who design the cement, shape of the cement stuff that gets poured around us. It's like, it's very annoying in the winter. So speaking of which, Global has finally, one of the news agencies, I was saying they keep showing cyclists in their pictures of how terrible commuting is. Now they finally mentioned us by saying it must be dicey for us. Yes, it must be dicey for them. Between car ads, of course, I'm sure. So this document that was leaked to the NDP about the new conservative plan for the healthcare, for their assault on healthcare or something. The document that was leaked, it contained identifying information that when it got passed through, so this is it. Basically, they figured out who the snitch was in the Conservative Party, because neither they nor the or I guess maybe it was, I guess it was just the NDP's fault. I don't know if it was both, if they both dropped the ball, or the NDP totally had a chance to remove this one thing, and it was a URL, like a web address, like some HTTP something. And because the link didn't go anywhere, the person who was looking through the document, who would have been, who should have been redacting that, thought, I'll just leave it in. So that to me is hilarious. Like this, hey, it's easy to drop the ball on some weird tech thing, especially when it comes to security, especially when it comes to classified stuff or sensitive information and stuff like that. But boy, oh boy, that's just hilarious. But in a kind of an almost similar story, the RCMP has decided to take on the challenge of breaking cryptocurrency. So this corporate exec or something of some kind of investment firm basically died with the keys to a digital vault kind of thing, right? So they were the only person who had the information, the login, basically, but not a login, the keys, the access to this vast, like crazy sums of money in their clients' investments and stuff like that. So now this company is trying to figure out how to access all this wealth that is stranded because this person died with the keys. And the problem with cryptocurrency is that it's too secure. And so the company can't get the money. And so the RCMP has taken possession of the person's hard drive. And so, well, hopefully if the guy was dumb enough to die with the password, if he was dumb enough to die with the keys, maybe he was dumb enough to leave it around in a stupid spot on his laptop. So we'll see, but this could be one of those. It's going to be, I don't know, if the RCMP really is talking about cracking the ledger or something like that. Good luck, boys. Godspeed. So there's of course there's crazy stuff going on in Venezuela, but now finally, since we have a CBC reporter there, she managed to interview the head of the National Assembly, and they actually did a good interview and stuff. So just watch that. Unfortunately, he made the gaffe of listing Quebec as a city, along with he was like, yeah, Toronto, Vancouver, Quebec, cities like that. Like, no, dude, it's Montreal or Quebec City, but just it's Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. Those are the 3 Canadian cities that you need to know. So, and Calgary, or no, it's just Toronto. You just need to know about Toronto and Montreal. But no, you just need to know about, just don't call Quebec a city. That's so he called Quebec a city. But meanwhile, the rest of the press, and like not the CBC in this interview, because they actually covered why he is not the self-declared president. But he did at some point have to declare himself the president, but that's because he was the head of the assembly. He became the president. It's complicated, but the press keeps describing him in shorthand as self-declared president or the self-declared head of state, or just using this thing self-declared. But it's not that simple. So in abbreviated form, they shouldn't be saying that. In abbreviated form, the way that they're saying that and stuff is a little on the propaganda end, which is not totally surprising given that like even the NDP for a while was officially like, no, hands off Venezuela, don't interfere with their situation. This is the legit president, probably because they hadn't done their homework. So Canadians, politicians and otherwise, are kind of learning about the situation piece by piece, like me, which is why I'm reporting on it in very vague terms. But at least I'm being vague about it instead of saying stuff like self-declared when it says the law there is he's supposed to become president if certain things happen, such as the head of state running an election for himself to when they say self-declared, they're actually, to be accurate, that's Maduro is the self-declared guy. So a little bit of, but the surprise, the Canadian network news has a bit of a tangle. Meanwhile, so some Canadians are suing the government for not doing their due diligence in protecting them while they're in Cuba at this consulate that was getting attacked with like sonic weapons, like energy weapons and stuff. So, in a country where like we're in denial about, magnetic fields causing people pain and like fluoride being bad for your brain and stuff like that. It's not surprising that, these diplomats got told like something, I don't know what they got told, but it wasn't quite as much as they should have been told. And the people who should have told them kind of knew that. So, according to the lawsuit. So they are actually suing the government, I think 6 of them or something like that. And basically the government has stopped stationing diplomats there who have families in tow. So these are all diplomats who had their families there with them. And family members were having like just crazy physical symptoms of these like sonic attacks or energy attacks or something like that. I think just sonic. It goes to show what you can do with sound. But sound, magnetic fields, there's so much invisible stuff that that can be super harmful. Canada is kind of traditionally bad at acknowledging that. Saskatchewan is really super dead cold, like extremely cold, like suddenly cold, like dangerous. Like really, that it really sucks for them right now. It's because of global warming. It really completely sucks. Like the Saskatchewan, the Saskatoon folks, the Saskatchewan folks in general, is exceptionally cold. And it was part of a snap. It wasn't so bad, and then boom. The big news story of the day is we are going to have drones monitoring Canada, run by Canada, for Canada, above Canada. This is really going to enter us into a whole new era of surveillance of rural areas of Canada. And it's a big deal. It's been a big deal for Americans to surveil their own people with like with the type of drones you'd find in a war zone. But for Canada to do it is pretty serious, and it's happening. They've picked the drones they want, and now they're going to see. So basically, though, whatever has been going on out in the sticks is out of sight, out of mind, or whatever, is now going to be very much in the awareness of the Canadian military, not the public, but just the military. So it's the end of an era, and it's a totally new era. Another aspect of this era, massive animal die-offs. Another one in the Netherlands along the coast, about 20,000 birds. The theory is this shipping spill, where a whole bunch of toxic stuff that shouldn't be transported on the ocean in the first place, of course, got spilled, and that's probably what caused those 20,000 birds to die. That sucks. E-cigarettes, the bad thing about them is they explode because lithium-ion batteries explode, and cheap electronics, really low-quality electronics proliferate pretty readily for us. So recently, we had the second recent explosion, killing a American. Thing blew up while he was using it and blew up right in his face. He's dead. Which, it's an issue for cell phones too, but the e-cigarette situation is, you really have to be super careful to pick. If you're vaping, you really have to, don't go cheap. You have to pick a really quality build, because you're, like with a cell phone, you're putting something to your face that could just blow up if just a tiny bit of the wrong thing happens with it, because those lithium-ion batteries are so messed up. They're so volatile. Chrysler has this big recall. A whole bunch of their trucks have steering wheels that just stop working and brakes that stop working. This is a crazy story. So assisted suicide has been legal in Canada for a little while now. This organization, Dying with Dignity, which is like advocating for people who are concerned about, who want access to good assisted suicide services. They released this story about some of the difficulties with it that was recorded by this woman before she committed suicide legally. And so it's being released after she's dead. It's a good kind of rundown of some of the issues that people who are considering this face when they're trying to figure out how and when to end their lives. One bit of it is it's people end up having to schedule it earlier than they want, so that it'll happen while they're still, before they lose their faculties too much. But there's a whole bunch of details about it that she speaks on. But the real interesting news factor of it is their decision to release it after she dies. So the U.S. and Russia are both pretty happy about having abandoned the nuclear arms treaty that was signed way back in the day with Gorbachev and what's his name. The reason that it's so convenient for Russia is because they've got this new missile system that can just vape anybody anywhere in Europe, and they really wanted it. And the U.S. wants to be able to match arms with China. They want to be able to have this arms race with China. So it's like both countries are accusing each other of disobeying the deal. They're probably both right. It just happens that, Russia wants to be able to nuke anyone in Europe, and the U.S. wants to be able to nuke China more than either of them are interested in denuclearization. They're probably the governments of these countries, the people in these governments they're probably as negative as anyone else when they think about the future of the planet. They're just like, well, we're screwed anyway. Let's just have some fun or something, because abandoning the nuclear arms treaty for a kick-ass rocket system, I don't know. But so here in Canada, Global interviewed this temporary foreign worker who. So now in the press, we got another good interview about the situation that people in our temporary foreign workers program face. And I reported on before on this other newfangled thing that sounds like exactly that, but the politician who introduced it didn't mention this. This is that program. So this is the program that we've been running in Canada for the longest time. And it's so exploitative. It's just such a joke. And the person that they interviewed ended up with basically making $3 an hour. $3 an hour. I've made $3 an hour. So in Honduras, Berta Cáceres was a Cáceres. I can't roll my R's right. She was murdered. She was an activist she was an environmental activist, and she was murdered. The investigation has concluded that a former energy executive was behind the murder, and that either the same person or a different current energy executive aided one of the 7 men implicated in her murder to actually get it done. This is another rock solid direct connection between the murder of activists, environmental activists, at the actual hands of energy industry people. This one is a really, really clear cut, really, really, the documentation is coming together really nicely. A lot of these cases are more blurry, so this one is so nice to get one that is being actually investigated. It shows how it, just like the murder of Khashoggi, it's like they're almost don't even care whether they get away with it because it's so brazen. Anyway, so for the last piece of news of the day, ending on definitely not a high note. So by Thursday evening, because it's taken me forever to round up the news of the day for Wednesday, everybody except for me, maybe you, has found out whether this new Louisiana law has or has not has come into effect, which would leave only one doctor available in the whole state to do abortions, simply by tweaking it so that you need to have admitting privileges at a hospital within 30 miles. They just figured out what would make it so that they'd whittle it down to like one guy or a girl. So that some of the news for Wednesday. And it's very, very, very cold in Saskatchewan.